Imagine walking into your boss's office and giving notice because your writing has become your primary revenue stream. Or your podcast is successful enough that you can quit your day job. Or maybe having your marketing on autopilot so you can spend your time on the art career you love rather than on marketing. Are you a creative person who's great at what you do, but marketing makes you freeze? You're not alone. I help passionate, purpose-driven creatives overcome fear, find their brand voice, and build a marketing strategy that works for them. Oh yeah, I also make it easy and painless. It's never too late to grow the business you've been dreaming about. Book an introductory call with me, Rob Southgate, at southgatesmallbusiness.com today. And let's take the pain out of marketing together. One of my favorite events from last year is happening again, and you don't want to miss it. Books and Brews 2 will be held on Saturday, August 2nd, 2025, at the Wyndham Hotel in Noblesville, Indiana, just outside of Indianapolis. You can meet over 60 horror authors, all in one place. You can buy books on site, or you can bring what you already have and you can get them signed while you meet the authors. Books and Brews 2 is brought to you by the incredible horror book Facebook group, Books of Horror. Get your tickets today by clicking the link in the show notes. You don't need to be afraid. It's just horror authors. Welcome to Ink Blots, the show where I interview authors about their lives, writing, and the books they love. Be sure to follow the Ink Blots podcast on Substack. Not only can you listen to the latest episodes, but our Substack also has interview transcriptions and links to books and other items that we talk about on the show. If you like what we're doing, please give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and on YouTube. It really helps us and our sponsors out. Oh, and leave comments. We really do read and respond to every one. Now, let's get on with the show. Welcome to Ink Blots. I'm Rob Southgate. I have with me, surprise, surprise, this month, what a shocker, I have another horror author with me. A horror author that, if you're paying attention to this feed for Ink Blots, I interviewed last year, Andrew Najberg. Welcome to the show.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited. When you signed up for another interview, I'm like, I love Andrew. I can't wait to have him on. The original interview is on this feed, but that was from a year ago. So there's new stuff, and there's a pre-order book that we'll talk about that's going to be talked about in this interview. And you have given me a challenge here, Andrew. I have to come up with new questions and new conversation. So maybe I shouldn't be inviting you guys back because I got to do all this. No, I'm kidding. So, Andrew, since if they haven't listened to that, why don't you tell people who you are, what you do, kind of how we ended up here?
All right. So, yeah, my name's Andrew Najberg, and I'm a university lecturer. I taught at the University of Tennessee, Chattanooga for almost 20 years now. I'm also a horror, science fiction, and fantasy novelist. My debut novel, The Mobius Door, came out in 2023, and it was longlisted for the Stoker for Outstanding Achievement and Debut, but did not make the final ballot. But it's actually continued to get a good deal of attention, even making it into this year's Books of Horror Indie Brawl. So, it's been really cool seeing that book get a pretty, solid longevity. It was followed up by my novel Gollitok, which made last year's Indie Horror Brawl, though it did get a little bit trounced by John Durgan. But, Durgan's fantastic. He's an excellent writer, has a great following. So, I was just really thrilled to, be up in that same bracket with him. But I also have so I had a middle grade fantasy novel called The Neverborn Thief, but the press that put it out shut down unexpectedly, and it's been re-signed and rewritten with Crystal Cove, the young adult branch of Crystal Lake Entertainment, and it's actually coming out again on July 22nd.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it because I really love that book. It's the one that I wrote because I write horror and I write poetry and stuff like that, and a lot of my time goes to that. And, that's time that I'm not spending with my kids. And so, one thing I was always conscious about is, putting all this work into these projects that are this like other part of my life. And I wanted to be able to involve my kids and, create something that my kids would enjoy. So I wrote this middle grade book and, it got great, really good reviews actually, but it didn't hit a wide market. And the press was brand new. It was actually their release title. And they lost their marketer right at their launch. And so suddenly we ended up scrambling to try to figure out how to promote this title. And it just didn't work out. And then the press, after maybe 4 or 5 more releases, decided to shutter. And I rewrote the book for Crystal Lake, and it's kind of a beefed up, more mature version of the novel. This one's more squarely YA title rather than middle grade. I'm super excited about that one. Then I've got a short story collection called In Those Fading Stars, which is a combination of horror, magical realism, and science fiction. That one did make the long list for the Stoker Award for collection of short fiction, though like Mobius, it didn't get the ballot. But I've still been really excited to have the books kind of get some eyes on them and some critical recognition, because coming out of MFA and poetry background, the quality of the work does matter to me. I really, really invest in, quality prose. I try to offer insightful thoughts in the pieces. Like I want them to feel meaningful and not just like, an entertaining story. And that's not to knock entertaining stories. Sometimes the best reads are the ones that just blast out the gates and, just sweep you off your feet. But, ultimately, it's just part of what I'm trying to, this is part of what I'm trying to do with the work. And right now, I'm gearing up for Books and Brews 2, which I'm really excited about. Aside from the re-release of Neverborn Thief, I'm also going to be bringing with me, hopefully, the first batch of physical copies of Extinction Dream, my
That's
science
the one
fiction
on pre-order right now.
Yeah, and that comes out August 1st, so literally right at the start of Books and Brews. And it's been getting great responses from the from the advanced readers, and I just sent out a huge batch of ARCs. So I'm sitting here with my my fingers crossed, waiting to start getting those back in. And then finally, I'm also a board game designer. I'm actually new to it. I got lucky enough to work with the author John Cohn on writing cards and material for Eli Roth's Thanksgiving board game.
Which I interviewed. There's an interview with John, and we talk about the Thanksgiving game on there.
Nice. Yeah, the game's a blast, and it was so much fun to get to make cards for it. Just kind of, just plunge into the fun and gore of the idea. But I ended up really enjoying talking with John about it. And I've been a lifelong board gamer. I actually have a huge shelf full of board games right over to my left. But I had an idea for a board game that I'd been thinking about for a couple of years, and I pitched it to John, and he loved the idea, and we started working on it together. Spent about 8 months refining it and testing it and polishing it, and that evolved into what's now a board game called The Bad Side of Town, which is now signed with Beyond Killer Games. We're going to have a September Kickstarter launch, so I'm going to be pumping that up at Books and Brews as well, trying to set up a mailing list for it.
You also need to come on Go Fund This. That's the show where I talk to people who have Kickstarters or Indiegogos or whatever, but crowdfunding, and we just go through, here's what it is, here are the different tiers. We maybe talk about stretch goals a little bit. I want to expose people to these. You have got to come on there.
Absolutely. That sounds fantastic.
In fact, open invitation.
I'm literally writing some of the stretch material right now. That's actually been a big project for the moment. I'm building an expansion, a couple bonus packs for it and
Very
things like
cool.
that. So I'd be delighted to come on that.
Yeah, great. Well, you have an open invitation when you're ready. You know how to catch me, and you just say, I'm ready.
Fantastic. But yeah, it's been really exciting. I've had a lot of stuff developing. I've got another novel signed through Wicked House that comes out in 2026 that I'm actually revising right now. That's kind of the big thing on my plate. And then I got another project I'm wrapping up right now, or at least I'm wrapping up the first draft of it. I've got to pass it to a couple alpha readers, get some feedback, and then I'm going to sit down and do, my big prose revision where I really try to, focus on style and presentation.
Sure. So, okay, I'm going to get into some questions. First of all, you've got a lot going on, all of the gaming and everything. What's a typical day of writing look like for you?
So, one thing that I'm lucky on is the teaching schedule does give me some flexibility. I do prefer to write early. I wake up, honestly about 5:30, largely because my kids go to school on the other side of town. And so there's a big commute to get them there and stuff like that on the days I'm dropping them off. But, usually around, 8:30 or 9 is when I try to start writing. I usually do focus first on new drafting. I honestly just have a general feel that, revision, once you have material on the page, I think revision is actually more challenging than drafting in some ways because, you do have to be really focused. You have to be really attentive to detail. But at the same time, I'm honestly much more worried about getting older and being less inventive, having ideas come more slowly. And so, if I have outpourings of ideas, I kind of want to focus on that early and get that out, make sure I have material down on the page. So, I'm always working on a couple different drafts. I have things in various different stages of note taking and kind of just bludgeoning my way through the base plot or characters. Then I usually do spend at least, about an hour and a half doing raw drafting. And then I try to get about an hour and a half of either revision, planning, craft focus, that kind of thing. I might sit down and, try to break down one of my characters or something like that. Try to make sure I know exactly who they are and, where they're coming from. And of course, I'm not somebody who does a lot of this on the page. Honestly, literally, it looks like me sitting at my kitchen table, staring off into space, sipping coffee. One of my, I always liked the show, The Big Bang Theory. I got tired of it eventually, but it was really fun when it first came on. And one of the, all of the characters are teachers, and at one point, one of the characters gets asked, "So what did you do today? What did you do at work today?" And he goes, "Just sat around and thought about stuff." And I'm like, "Hey, that sounds like my day." But yeah, and after that though, I usually do have to turn attention to what I call my live projects, things that are actually bringing in current income. So I do editing as well. I just finished editing a string of Try Not to Die books for Mark Tullius and Vincere Press. That's been a ton of fun to work on that series. I had my own come out through there last year, and then since then I've gotten to work on 3 different titles, and it's been an absolute blast. So if I have an editing plate on my project, and I do editing for Wicked House as well, and we've had some speculation on me taking some larger roles at Wicked House for in various different ways. I'll do that kind of work. And then, of course, I have my teaching work, which, always has to get my time and attention. So, if I have class planning to do, usually that's a good, I spend a good 3 or 4 hours a day during the semester working on that. Like this morning, I'm about to start teaching a summer class here in 2 weeks. And so I was sitting down writing assignment sheets. And so I'll usually try to wrap that up, and I'll spend a few hours with the kids at that point. Sometimes, like, I cook dinner every night, and when I'm cooking dinner, if it's something that takes a while, maybe I'll try to squeeze in a little bit extra writing time during that. And once the wife and I get the kids to bed, sometimes we'll hang out, and then sometimes I'll sit down and try to do yet again another little push at the end of the evening as well.
Okay, so you said one that I think is in there, but I'm going to ask you a related question to what I just asked. Are there any rituals you have around it?
Not a whole lot. Coffee. The coffee is the big one, honestly. For the most part, I just write whenever, wherever. I record a lot of voice notes when I'm driving. If I'm out and about, it sometimes drives my wife nuts, but I'll just stop and be like, hang on. And I'll just send myself an email real quick with some text, or some ideas, or, sketch out a scene or something like that. I really don't have a whole lot of particular practices, but yeah, the coffee really is the big one. Otherwise I work everywhere I can, so I don't have I need to have certain music or lighting.
This pencil, like Stephen King has the one type of pencil he uses, and he handwrites, mm-hmm. and doesn't he have his original typewriter or something he has to do his first draft on? Isn't there something like that?
I think I've heard that before. And I tried to do something like that at one point. Like the Mobius Door was partially written on a typewriter in my office on campus that my wife got me, and they're really nice. It's the same model that Hemingway used to use. So it's a really nice classic, the kind you can pick up and just like beat somebody down with if you're in a horror movie.
Right.
I'm pretty sure that's happened in horror movies before. So, but yeah, it's
that's the Annie Wilkes model, isn't it?
I think so, yeah. No, I tried that, but really, for me, it's the ideas and lines and fragments and things like they just pop into my head all the time. I have to work more to shut that stuff off right now than to find ways to trigger it. And so, yeah,
that's tricky. That's tricky. As somebody who runs a big podcast network and is always thinking of the ideas, it is. You have to shut it off. I actually just told a story about this. I know it's not about me, but I'm going to tell you a quick story. We went to see Paul McCartney when we were in our early 20s, and halfway through, I told my girlfriend at the time, wife now, I said, "This is making me crazy. I can't shut off the ideas. I want to listen to Paul McCartney." And it's how it is, man. It's how it is. And I get that. Sometimes you have to go, no, I got to get the work done. And then I'll come back to the ideas, So, all right. You've got some weird books. Okay. I'm going to just put that right on Front Street. What is the weirdest thing you've had to Google for a book? And I'm also going to say the thing that you hope doesn't end up, you having to talk about in court.
So, the funny thing is I can honestly say I don't Google a whole lot of things for my books. Instead, I spend a lot of my free time, especially in my office on campus. I read a lot of things like academic papers and stuff like that. And so a lot of my normal reading is stuff like I read anything I can find on black holes, on interdimensional travel, on weird properties of light. Fungus is a huge one I love reading about, basically a lot of this stuff I've got set up to just funnel papers into my inbox. Some biologist puts out a study about some new fungus whose roots talk to each other. That kind of just gets channeled to me automatically. And so, a lot of my writing I pull from the things that I've been reading about. Now, one thing I've definitely done a lot of Googling about things like, decomposition of corpses. I think that's pretty much par for the course, though. Par for the course.
Par for the corpse, yes.
Yeah, par for the corpse.
I think we have a T-shirt for this episode now.
But no, it's I think that's a lot of what I end up Googling is pretty standard stuff for a horror author. I'll Google types of guns. I'll Google things about ballistics or about gunshot wounds or knife wounds and that kind of thing. But I don't think it's anything that's particularly weird. But no, because again, I'll be reading about microbiology the day before, and that's where the weird stuff usually tends to come in. Once you get to the real details of the way things work, everything becomes bizarre and fascinating.
Yeah, true. So I'm deciding which question I want to go with here, because there's so many different ways I could go. You work with students, okay, and you're obviously, as you're editing, you're also you don't just edit and say, here's where a comma goes. You're instructing, right? So what is the one piece of no fluff advice that you would give authors if somebody said, what's the best advice you can give me?
So precision of detail is the most important thing. It's the thing that defines most mature prose. And that's going to, one thing I really try to impress on my students, and because, a lot of them will avoid a lot of detail. And there is certainly too much detail. You can overwhelm a reader to the point where the details cease being meaningful, even if every single one of them is intentional. But the most common response I get from folk who I encourage to be more precise, they start to say things like, well, I don't want this to lose its relatability. If I'm too precise, people won't connect with it anymore. And like my response to that is no. Your reader is going to actually work really hard to project themselves onto what you're writing. Mm-hmm. It's possible to alienate them, to be too weird or obtuse or confusing or something. But for the most part, if there's something they can latch onto, they will. It's just the way, we can look at the front of a car and we can see a face in the headlights and grill. We look at plug outlets and we see faces. And I mean, these things look nothing like the human face aside from just, very base geometric resemblance, but we still do it. It's instinctual. So, if we write about something that, has a core experience that's relatable, losing a loved one, trying to find love, trying to find self-validation, trying to find somebody to talk to. Mm-hmm. Those are all motives that people will deeply and clearly connect with. And then beyond that, the particulars are what is going to make it interesting. It's going to be what makes it distinctly you. And then also people read to have experiences, and the details are the thing that creates the experiences. They create the sensory experience. They create the emotional experience. So yeah, that's like my core advice. And it's everything I say always comes back to that when I'm talking craft.
Okay. So I know you're a horror author, but you're obviously dealing with all sorts of genres here. No matter what the genre, what do you think makes a story truly unforgettable?
That's a tough one. I do think that there's a bit of a spectrum between the familiar and the novel. Novelty is always going to be something that helps us stand out because it's going to be the stuff that the reader has never seen before. That's distinct and unique. And admittedly, this is where I tend to go weird or go home.
I think we have a second T-shirt now, Andrew.
No, if I can try to, I love connecting wild and out there ideas. Some of my brainstorming really is me sitting there thinking of the most bizarre type of character I can come up with, or what's the weirdest shit that I can imagine happening to me if I walk out the door today. My clothes turned into metal during the night. What's that going to do? It's just there is that element, but at the same time, if you're too novel and if everything is just too chaotic or unique or out there, we do lose our ability to really connect and relate with it. It's intellectually interesting, but it's not emotionally stimulating. And so, at the same time, while I do work in a lot of oddities and a lot of sort of surface level bizarreness, and even then I try to, turn that into metaphors, similes, and that kind of thing. You still got to connect it to a resonant emotional core, because that's going to be the thing that really lasts. If you can have your reader picturing these oddities, these unique things, but then also connecting that to something that's really familiar and central to their identity or their self, that's what's going to stick with them for a long time. If you don't have something foundational, something fundamental and familiar at the core, you're really going to struggle to make your reader think about it well after they've already closed that initial experience and run through the book.
Okay, I want to get specific on horror then. And this is not as much like being unforgettable, but what do you think are elements that need to be there to deliver truly effective horror?
Still
the familiarity?
Well, yeah, you have to care about the characters, and in order to care about the characters, there's got to be something with them that you're going to relate to. If they're completely alien, again, you'll find them fascinating, but it's not going to be, you're not going to cry if something happens to the alien that you know nothing about, or that the only things that about are just nifty and amusing. This is why so many horror films start. A family goes on vacation and finds themselves stranded in an isolated cabin. It's that the familiarity of that family experience is going to be the thing that draws you to connect with the characters. And then it puts you on the journey through all of these oddities and extremities. It's why, something like, Three Body Problem, by with Six and Lou. If you watch the show, for example, they tried to ground it in a series of friendships. These are longtime friends, and they're watching their their friends face horrible fates potentially. And that's going to be something we connect with. Stranger Things. I mean, that story's got a wild science fiction horror plot.
It's got kids on bikes. We all relate.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, the new generation, I'm not sure. It could be like kids watching YouTube videos of kids on bikes. But
watching kids on bikes.
But no,
Stranger Things is just going to be kids sitting around streaming Stranger Things on Netflix. We all relate.
But each of those plot lines is pretty relatable. You have one parent who lost a child to a disease, another parent whose child has gone missing. That's two of the most fundamental fears that parents have. How can your child spin out of your control? Then you have, the four best friends who, they're a little bit outcast, picked on, they struggle to get along, to relate outside of their own group, and they have their own imaginative summer adventures. And, to a certain extent, it's their adventures hit a real reality, but, picturing yourself encountering a stranger in the woods who has special powers and then suddenly finding yourself fighting a monster. I mean, isn't that what any kid who grew up in the 80s and 90s thought about while they were playing out in the woods? That's it's a really relatable experience. You have the awkward teenager who he struggles to converse with people. I mean, that's 60% of the population right there. And then you have the character who feels like, the other teenager who is trying to kind of fake their way through their friendships and relationships. Again, all of this is really relatable. It's the unique, it's the details of their experience, and then the conflicts and challenges they encounter that are going to create the horror story of it. That's where the horror largely comes from. But at the core, you care about those things because you understand and invest in those basic emotional connections.
So how much work do you do with your characters ahead of time? Do you really think out all those things, or do you kind of write for a while and see what they develop into, and then you're in the starting gate?
So I actually do almost no pre-planning whatsoever. I will start writing the first chapter, or at least a first chapter, cold. I'll start with the premise, the situation, and then I stop. And then I start thinking things through. I start exploring, first I do kind of do okay, we're at point A, what's point B? What's the next scene? Where could this go from here? And I'll start thinking about some permutations, what are follow-up scenes to this opening. But then once I do have, a little bit of trajectory established, usually it's going to be about 2 to 3 chapters for me. Then I actually start a process of, I run permutations is the best way to put it. Like while I'm driving, while I'm walking around or washing the dishes, I actually run through iterations of the characters' interactions and backstories in my head. And so, if I know 2 characters are going to need to interact in the next scene, I'll play through like 10 different versions of the conversation until I find one that feels like it's the one that matches what I've been establishing so far. Or I'll think about memories that the character might have. And then, I'll think about, okay, so, who are this kid? Who are this fellow's friends when he were a kid? What were his hobbies? What did he? What was a day of school like? And when I finally latch, when I hit one that I feel like, okay, this one seems to really connect to not just this character, but what's happening in the story. Then I bring that one into the narrative, and I'll either write it down, as a separate note, or I'll try to build it into the whatever scene is about to happen. And so, I kind of, sort of steadily move forward in these like kind of haltering steps. I write from beginning to end. I'll take notes on scenes that are coming down the road sometimes, and more often than not, those end up scrapped. It's for the most part, the draft that people read is fairly linearly produced into the draft you end up with, aside from sometimes I'll add in a couple of small scenes, or I do seem to have a habit of rewriting my endings after the initial push, but that's about it.
That actually matches the question I was about to ask. Well, because I find this fascinating, and when I've written things, I found the same thing. When you get to the end, have you ever had the characters surprise you and it just goes somewhere you weren't thinking? You're like, I plotted it out, I was going here, and the characters had something else they wanted to do.
Oh, absolutely. No, that happens a lot. Mobius Door in particular, that one was that was the hardest of my books to write. It had the most revisions, the most changes. In fact, actually, I cut about 250 pages of material
Wow.
from that
So if
book.
you're Stephen King, you're going to put out the uncut version with the extra 250 pages.
Not even no, it would be fundamentally it would fundamentally break the story. The original story had two families at its core, actually, and the final draft only has one, and that family was the less important family of the two. Actually, I literally
really?
cut out the entire main cast because
Wow.
I didn't like how their trajectory. Well, they were less interesting to me as characters, first off, but I also felt like from the plot point of view, their trajectory was fighting me. I just could not get these characters to start merging in the direction that they needed to, and nothing I could come up with would make it make sense. And so suddenly I looked at it, I was like, I could take this kid, and if I pull him over to this plot line and merge him with this family, it's gonna, that's gonna resolve his problem. The father, I don't know what to do with him at all. I think he's just gone. The girlfriend, she's gone. And then the son got blended into one of the side characters. And suddenly it was like, oh, wow, that really cleared the road. But yeah, so that one, the characters just literally wouldn't cooperate. Gollitok had early in its inception a fairly different direction for some of the characters. The main character and his sort of closest companion, Brogden, both of them ended up in a fairly different path, with Brogden in particular actually taking charge of the plot in ways I hadn't expected. But once I reached those moments, there's a point where that character kills one of the other members of the team. And I actually hadn't even planned that remotely. But when I hit that moment, I was just like, that's what happens here. And I had to scrap a whole bunch of planned material as a result. I had some ideas that I was planning out, and I was like, nope, that's gone. That character's dead. Now this is where these characters are. This is what they're dealing with. And I'm actually really thrilled with how it came out. It's one of my favorite moments in the book, but it was completely unplanned. So
I know you're in Tennessee. Have you ever been to Indianapolis? Have you ever been to this area where Books and Brews 2 is happening?
Not really. I've driven through there. I just moved my sister from Shreveport, Louisiana to Peoria, Illinois.
Okay.
And on the way back, I kind of drove close to Indianapolis. But no, I've never been there. I've seen signs, and just passed through the state a bit.
So are you, is there anything you're looking forward to doing when you get to Noblesville or to Indianapolis?
So I really like pork tenderloins, and I hear that pork tenderloin sandwiches are like a thing in Indianapolis.
Oh, they're a very good thing.
Yeah, so that's something I'm highly intrigued by. Otherwise, we're still deciding whether or not my family is coming with me or not. If they do, we'll probably hit up the Indianapolis Zoo, which I hear is pretty good.
How old are your kids?
12 and 9.
Okay. The Indianapolis Children's Museum is fantastic. And I know that people go, oh, it's going to be for little kids. 12 and 9 are still going to have a blast going to it. And so are you.
Yeah, we love children's museums.
This one's really
a few. So nice.
So excellent. Okay, is there anybody? So we were at Books and Brews 1, right? And I know you talk to everybody. I talk to everybody. Is there anybody at 2 that you didn't get to meet, or that you're hoping to meet at 2 that you're like, this is who I'm dying to have a conversation with?
Well, so to meet, I can't say a whole lot. I would like to meet Alma Katsu. She is pretty phenomenal. And a
lot of people have said Alma.
Yeah, and so I am looking forward to that. But truthfully, kind of on this, on this whole like writing journey thing, I've gotten to know a lot of really cool people, and I count some of them among really solid friends. And the frustration is, of course, we're scattered all over the country, so I don't get to see them very often. So I'm always looking forward to seeing Blaine. Blaine Daigle. I'm really looking forward to, getting to see John Cohn in person. We've met, twice before. At Books and Brews 1, and then we shared a table for part of AuthorCon 5. We've spent, a year and a half now making a game together. So we talk regularly. And then, I'm looking forward
in the same room is different, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then, I also want to hang out with the rest of, we call ourselves the Boo Crew. Me, John, Andrew Van Way, and Ben Farthing. We have a live streamed Baldur's Gate 3 playthrough every Monday. I talk with, Andrew and Ben also weekly. I've been in the same event as them a couple times, but, they live, Andrew lives in California. Ben lives in Virginia. So, unless I'm in these places, I don't get to directly interact with these folks. So they're huge up on the list as well. And, I love chatting and joking around with Duncan. So, I barely got to catch him at Books and Brews 1. There's a whole bunch of people on that list. It's kind of like a high school reunion, except that unlike my high school, I actually like these people.
The emotional trauma is not there, just in their writing.
Exactly.
So, Books and Brews 2. I cut you off, but it's because I wanted to pimp it. Books and Brews 2, Wyndham Hotel in Noblesville, Indiana. It's a high school reunion of horror authors. Get your tickets. I will put links in the show notes. I will put your links in the show notes, Andrew. I want everybody to go and buy all of Andrew's books, get them signed, get selfies with him, tell him scary stories about doors you found in the woods, which, by the way, Andrew, I don't think when we met last time I told you, I now know somebody who encountered exactly that.
Nice.
She has a weird-ass story. It's great.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, I love it. I just happened to mention your book. And she's like, oh, let me tell you a story. I'm like, holy cow. Okay, so, Andrew, what's the best place for people to interact with you?
Best overall is probably Facebook. I'm most active there. Seems like there's just great engagement among horror readers there. And then I'm pretty steadily on Instagram. I'm on TikTok as well. Both of those are sort of my secondary platforms right now, just because I just don't feel like I've gotten my stride in them yet. But you can definitely reach out through any of those. I'm on Twitter and Blue Sky and Threads, but I'm really not. Like I post things like big announcements there, but that's about it. Facebook's probably the most reliable way to get me, though.
Excellent. And like I said, go to the Wyndham Hotel in Noblesville, Indiana, and meet Andrew. That's the actual most reliable because he'll be there in person. And I'm sure you can meet all the other authors, and it's amazing. Okay. That's it, Andrew. Thank you so much. Good luck with all of this. I will put your links in the show notes. And if anyone's looking for an editor, he is always available. He has nothing but time on his hands. Thanks a lot, Andrew.
Oh, thank you.